Welcome to the Pigskin Payroll Podcast, where we talk all about ball and the coin that comes with it. We're a team dedicated to mastering the complexities of NFL and NIL contracts in college football. Passionate about exploring the financial and legal side of the game. And here we dive deep into contract negotiations and structures, player valuations, and how all these deals impact athletes and the teams that they play for. Whether you're a football fan or just someone curious about the business side of football, you've come to the right place. My name is Tony Storniolo, and alongside me is my co-host Johnathan Thibodeau. Unfortunately, Ty Marth couldn't make it tonight, but it's him and I, and we're ready to go.
Yeah, let's get it going, Tony. What are we getting into first today? It looks like a little bit of Sam Darnold, Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, unfortunately, Ty couldn't be here tonight. He's our big Vikings fan. And a few weeks ago, I think somebody mentioned the Vikings. I think it might have been him for the Thanksgiving pod. And we've been a little bit on a hiatus. We had New Year's Eve and Christmas, but we're really excited to get back into the swing of things. And yeah, I think the best thing to start out about, and specifically, it makes sense to talk about it after the game last night. Unfortunately, it didn't go the way we thought it would. We'd love to talk about the Minnesota Vikings. And I specifically put the Darnold dilemma because
Yeah,
it's really some gray area for what a team usually has to deal with. And just to set the scene, beginning of the season, the Vikings had drafted J.J. McCarthy. I forgot exactly what pick it was, but
I think it was pick 10.
Pick 10, yeah, right out of
Yep.
Michigan, just won the national championship. They got rid of Kirk Cousins off to Atlanta. That's a whole nother story. I'm sure we'll get into that in the future. And people were saying, oh, this kid could be good. Kevin McConnell, he's pretty good. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. And then he gets injured in, I think it was not even preseason. I think it was training,
Right.
right?
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah, before the season
So
started.
I remember people saying like, "Oh, the Vikings are going to finish last in the division. They're going to suck this year. They're going to have a huge downturn, even though they were playing pretty well the past few years with Kirk Cousins." And that has not been the case. I mean, Sam
The
freaking
furthest from it.
Sam
I know.
freaking Darnold has been playing not like he's seeing ghosts, but he's the freaking ghost buster this year. I mean, this man has been putting up some stats, and I see that you pulled it up already, Jonathan. As of
Yep.
last night's game, and obviously that didn't give him too many, big yards or whatever last night. But as of last night's game, 66.2 passing percentage, 4,319 passing yards, which I'm pretty sure is top 5 in the league. 35 touchdowns, same thing. 12 interceptions and 102.5 passer rating. I mean, this was a season, and some people were even calling for him to be in the MVP race. So,
Right. And it's kind of crazy because, he comes in and like you kind of mentioned at the beginning, this is not what anyone expected, right? JJ gets hurt. Everyone thinks he's your future. You bring in Sam on just a 1 year deal. I think it was like $10 million for this season, right? So he comes in. He's really just supposed to be kind of a bridge quarterback. You're really hoping he doesn't see much of the field at all this season. That's kind of the plan, it seemed like, for the Vikings this offseason. So he comes in and he's almost had too much success. So now you're talking about this dilemma they have. What do they do from here? This is such an unusual situation where the rookie quarterback gets hurt, you trade up to go get him, and then now you have Sam Darnold who's balled out, and you really didn't think you're going to have to pay him a huge contract, but now you're what were they this season? 14-3,
now 14 and 3 as of
14-3, something like that. So they just lost to the Lions, but they're still in the playoffs, and I think we'll kind of see how far they go down the road here in the playoffs. But it's
Yeah.
really interesting to see what they decide to do. I know we're going to kind of get into the contracts here in a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about JJ McCarthy and then talk about Sam Darnold, potential contracts, what that might look like. But yeah, really interesting situation for sure.
Yeah, I know that some people, are not as big of a fan. I always love seeing a good underdog story. Actually, it was my dad recently that said he's like, this kind of reminds me of like the Kurt Warner season, like in '99. Like
Okay.
it felt like that at least. Obviously, we thought last night might have that kind of same effect too. But And I don't want to ding him. Like, the Lions are good, and Aaron Glenn is a good defensive coordinator for the Lions, and
Absolutely.
but I know there's some shaky opinions of him still with like, oh, this is kind of a fluke. Kevin McConnell is just awesome. He's Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, JJ McCarthy would have played this way. I'm very curious to see, if they lose against the Rams. I think they play Monday Night Football next Monday. Do they just say, yeah, forget it. We'll try our luck with JJ McCarthy. Now I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, what's the contingency plan though? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, let's say JJ comes in, hopefully he's good. I mean, you traded up for him. I think something a lot of people aren't talking about is Daniel Jones is on the team too. Now he's
So
also a
true.
free agent, but
They just signed him,
maybe you
yeah.
move forward with JJ and you try to bring Daniel Jones back for another year, maybe pretty cheap. I think it's going to be a lot cheaper than Sam. And then maybe Daniel's kind of your bridge quarterback that you were expecting to have, this year. So
Yeah.
maybe that's an option. I think what's going to happen is I think there's going to be some teams interested in Sam. You got to look at the draft. I know Shadur, who else? Milrow, Dylan
You got
Gabriel. Who am I thinking of? There's another big one. I'm
I
missing one.
mean, I know I've talked about Garrett Nussmeier, but I don't know if I think
I'm
he
missing
declared.
one more.
I know Jackson Dart from Ole Miss is another big one.
Yeah.
But Cam Ward from Miami is
Cam
definitely.
Ward. That's who I'm thinking of. Yeah,
Okay,
Cam
yeah.
Ward. So there's gonna be some options, but are teams gonna like Sam Darnold more than those options? And if so, are they
He's
gonna go
proven
out
him, yeah. He's
and try and
shown
get
he
him?
can play.
So this kind of we've talked about this before, you and I have off the pod, but this situation reminds both of us a lot of Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, definitely.
But the big issue is like those guys were former first round picks. They bounce around, and then they get an opportunity and they make the most of it, like Sam's done. But their situations were different because there wasn't a rookie quarterback on the roster
No.
that they were expecting right to take over. So I'm kind of wondering how a contract's really going to look if he does go somewhere else. But I think there's going to be teams interested in free
Yeah.
agency. Yeah,
And before we
of
talk
course.
about the market, because I am interested, because I agree with you, it definitely seems similar to Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, but the Seahawks didn't have a guy waiting on the like who'd they have? I think at the time they might have had Drew Lock, which I'll talk about that later, actually.
Okay.
And the Bucks, they were just getting off Brady, so they're like, we'll take what we can get. So like I agree at this point, like the Vikings can afford to be like, let's take another gamble. I mean, we have good pieces on the team. Like it's a rookie QB. Why would we sign? If it is shaky with Sam Darnold, you truly believe that you still got a rookie QB on a rookie deal, and you can afford to. I will talk about some of the free agents too, like some of the defensive guys. And like if you want to keep that team intact and maybe make a few runs, maybe you just keep that. And that's my next question. Do you think JJ, should he be worried or should he not be? Like, what do you think?
Well, I think you just brought up some good points here, right? And that's something we need to get into too. Is the whole point of having a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal is so that you can build that team around that rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
They just paid JJ to be the top receiver in the NFL, and he got covered by a 5'9" Meek Robertson, and he got bullied all game versus freaking Detroit last week, right?
That was
Last
crazy.
night. So that was insane. But you're paying that guy top receiver money. You got Hawkinson, he's a top guy, getting a top tight end contract. There's a lot of guys on that team. And we need to I don't know. We probably should look at their free agents. I know Harrison Smith. He's getting older. There's some different guys that are going to be free agents, but they've got like 80 million in cap space. I
Yeah.
think, right? 78 million.
They
So
got a pretty good amount of cap space, yeah.
if they wanted to bring him back, I feel like they could probably do it. But if they wanted to be a little more aggressive in free agency and attack some other positions and sign some other guys from other teams, maybe not. But I don't know if JJ should be worried because after all, I mean, they traded up to get him.
I was going to
You
say,
know what I
what was
mean?
the draft
He's a
compensation?
top 10. Yeah, so I have it somewhere here. Yeah, so they gave up pick 11, 129, and 157 just to move up one spot to get him. So they gave up quite a bit. You know what I mean? It kind of reminds me of Mitch Trubisky back in the day with the
Oh,
Bears
God.
did
Oh, my
to
God.
trade up a pick to get him, right? Um, hopefully this works out a little better for JJ than it did Mission Chicago. But yeah, man, it's really intriguing. It's going to be
Yeah.
intriguing to see what they do here. But
So
I think if it was me, I'm keeping JJ, moving on from
just about to
Sam,
ask you, yeah.
re-signing Daniel, much cheaper. I think that's what I would do. You can't just move on already. I mean, he's young. He's going to give you more financial flexibility long term. I think
Yeah.
you got to do it. But
See, I feel like I do feel like at first, like right away, my first instinct is like, I feel like, seeing him in the locker room getting water sprayed on him and everything, and like, I just immediately
yeah,
go like, you kind of have this like attachment to a guy, like they seem like they're putting a lot of stock in him emotionally. And
hmm
like, I feel like if he does, like, I can understand it. Like, if he has like a complete goose egg like he did last night against the Rams, and like, Sean McVay, just him and the defensive coordinator just scheme something up with Jared or Braden Fisk and Jared Verse and just destroy him on the ends. Maybe you just kind of are like, all right, we had a great time. This was fun. Like, I get it. But like, if they win there and then they go on like a little bit of a run and maybe even get close in like the NFC
so
Championship against the
I
Lions,
think
like,
I think
bro,
I
maybe
think
I don't.
the way it's scheduled right now, I think they might play the Rams, and if they win that game, they might have to play the Lions
That's what
again
I think.
right
Yeah,
after that. So that's crazy. But that is a good point though. You do have this guy who has shown he can get you 14 wins and make the playoffs and be one of the best teams in a really competitive division,
yeah,
and in the NFC just in general. So there's something to that. Like it's so hard to find a good quarterback. So let's say you do decide, hey, we're going to re-sign him.
yeah.
What do you do with JJ? Because the way I look at it, you're probably going to at least do a 3-year deal,
I
right? And we're
mean,
going to talk about these contracts and how we think one's going to be structured for him. But if you're doing a 3-year deal for Sam, that leaves really 1 year left for JJ on his deal if he picked up his 5th year option. So that's really not enough to see what he's going to have. So I think now we're talking, okay, let's play this scenario where we keep Sam Darnold.
sure.
What are we getting for JJ? Because we're trading him. You have to at that point.
You got to trade
So
him.
so then it comes to, is there a team in the draft that thinks JJ McCarthy right now is better than any other quarterbacks in this
The
class? I
what
think
I
that's
will
what the
say,
conversation is.
what I will say is because I'm sure I'm trying to think about what was it? Yeah, this does remind me of that. What some people might compare this situation to is the Trey Lance, Brock Purdy situation, where Brock Purdy, had to start because of all those injuries and everything, and then they just got rid of Trey Lance and everything. But the difference
Yep.
is I do believe that people would look better on JJ McCarthy than Trey Lance, because in reality, when Trey Lance was like drafted, I think there were people that were like, he's definitely a project, and like, you put so much into him. Whereas I feel like JJ McCarthy, there's definitely like this aura of like, oh, he just put
And
a championship team, and like he could still possibly do it. I think you could get more for him.
right, like I think maybe there's like that potential there, but the big difference I would say there is, JJ hasn't played yet.
That's true.
Trey Lance had played a little bit before he
Yeah,
was traded to
that's
the Cowboys, and he wasn't very good.
no,
so, so I think that's a big difference there. Like
true.
maybe teams will see a little more potential in him. He's had a year in the NFL under his belt. He's played for a great head coach, and Mike McConnell, and I think maybe teams would be like, okay, you know what? Maybe we will give up a first round pick
Yeah.
in the draft this year if we think he's better than a Shador or Cam Ward or Milrow. Like, is JJ better than Milrow? Probably. You know what I mean? I think Milrow is going to be a big project for a team that takes him. He's got all the physical tools, but I think I'd rather have JJ McCarthy
He
there.
might
So
remind me more of how Richardson in the Colts.
yeah, AR, yeah, and
Milrow,
look how that's going.
and I don't
From
think that
Indiana,
many teams will be going nuts over that.
right,
I think
right.
that they might have learned. We'll
I
see,
think
but
so.
I'd love to talk tight or Colts in the future. That'd be fun.
Yeah, we could.
But well, if they were to make the decision to sign Darnold, which, we don't know how it'll go. I still think that there's a lot of factors up in the air on it. at least from what we put down in our notes, I think we kind of have the right idea as far as the range. We were looking at contracts like Derek Carr's with the Saints, Baker Mayfield's, as we mentioned, and Geno Smith, as we mentioned. And as far as like kind of the range between these three, you go from the bottom is like Geno Smith, which is of overall the 3 year, $75 million with a $25 million APY. You got Baker's kind of in the middle with the $100 million, $33 million, 330, whatever APY. And then you got the highest of Derek Carr at 37.5 million APY. I feel like he's within this range. And I do feel like where they argue or what's negotiated over is going to kind of stay within here, or it kind of depends. I mean, Derek Carr really kind of helped him out in a sense of just not playing too well. I mean, he played great in the first 2 games of the season, and then things just went to shit, really. But
Yeah.
ever since then, like, he didn't play well, and then he got injured. Baker, and him and Darnold have kind of set the standard since they left a couple of the bad franchises. But I do feel like he's played to a level higher than Geno Smith. So,
Absolutely.
or in my
Absolutely.
eyes, should be the Baker Mayfield deal at the most minimum, like the complete minimum.
I agree. I think you're right. I think you're right here. Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, I think those deals were structured really similarly. They're both 3-year deals. I think the guarantees, 40% of the deal guaranteed for Bake, and then Geno like 36.5. I think the guarantees are very similar in both those. First 2 years for Geno were fully guaranteed. Most of Baker's second year was fully guaranteed as well. But I think those structures are similar. I think it's going to be a 3-year deal. But I think he's probably going to be closer to that Derek Carr APY. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Aaron Rodgers is right there too. They're both 37.5 million. I think he's going to be a little higher, and I say that just because I feel like statistically, and I'm going to share my screen here again and pull up some statistics. If you just look at Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, statistically, the year before Bake signed his deal, and then this season for Sam, like I think Sam just played a lot better and has, I don't even know if you can argue that he's necessarily had considerably better weapons either. Like Bake had Mike Evans and Godwin and a whole crew of guys over there in Tampa Bay. So it's not like he didn't have a lot of talent to work with over there. You know what I mean? So I think statistically, Sam has probably outplayed Baker. And since we're a year after that contract, I feel like we're probably looking at a deal 3 years, 112.5 million is what I would say is probably about where it's going to fall.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing probably about a $30 million signing bonus. That's what I'm projecting for him. But yeah, I think you're right on there with kind of those numbers. I think he'll get close to that Derek Carr APY though, 37.5.
I will say the first thing that comes to my thought when I see this is, who is it? The owner of the Panthers. I forgot his name. What is it? David Tepper.
What is
it? I think
Tepper?
it's Tepper. Yeah.
Tepper? Yeah, it's
You can't show him this because he's gonna be crying. Crying.
Didn't even think about that.
Both of them on the team.
Both of them, yeah.
How do you manage?
Dave Tepper, yeah.
And now, obviously,
Man.
things are looking pretty good for them. Bryce Young is peaking at the right time, to save himself before the Panthers make any rash decisions in the draft. But it's crazy that these two guys, like, pretty much top 5 in some categories this year, and both of them at one point, people were screaming MVP, like they were both on the same team at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I think it shows you too, like how important it is not to give up on these quarterbacks so early, and how important coaching is.
Yep.
These guys get with the right coaches and the right scheme, and look how well they play. So
one thing, like that I thought of was like, Kevin McConnell said his whole thing like franchises fail quarterbacks sometimes. I think that might not have been exactly what he said, but I believe that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny seeing like them, downplay some of the things that Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold in the media, and it's because nobody wants to have the conversation that if we start saying that it's the franchises, then they have to start taking accountability for the fact that, and the coaching, that they have to start taking accountability for the fact that these, first round draft picks are the reason they're not working out is not them, because
Right.
these are perfect examples right here. Like the
Mhm.
Browns traded Baker Mayfield for Deshaun Watson, and
Yeah.
they were blaming him when he was injured a ton of time. And then Sam Darnold was seeing ghosts, but who did he have at coach? Like, and who did he have
Yeah.
to support him? The Jets? Like, and then they went to the Panthers and they both dealt with some of the same issues. Like, and it's funny
So,
because you see that one game where he goes to the Rams, Baker, and then he
yeah.
thrives, and then he goes to the Panthers, and it's like, oh, whatever. Or was it the
So
other way?
then so then here's the thing I think of. Who's next? Who's the next guy out there right now that is gonna find himself in a similar situation? And I have a name that comes to mind right now that I'm thinking of, but is there anybody out there? I've got 2, but is there anyone out there you're thinking of that, hey, actually, I've got 3. I've
Oh,
got 3
geez.
now. I've got 3 that popped in my head.
I'm just gonna let you know.
Anybody any
I can't even
so I've
think.
got 3 guys, and some of these might seem like stretches, but I think if you really think about this, at one point, Sam Darnold was at a really he was at a huge low in his
Yeah.
career, and so was Baker, and so was Geno Smith, right? All 3 of these guys, really.
Mhm.
And I don't think anyone expected them to get to this level that they're at right now. So I'm gonna throw 3 names out there. One, I'm gonna say Justin Fields.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think and I think it's gonna be a little different. I don't think he's ever gonna necessarily be a passer and put
No.
up stats like these 2 guys have. But I think he's he has the opportunity to have a huge resurgence in his career. And then I think 2 more, Daniel Jones, we've talked a little bit about. I
There's
think him right now and what he's probably been, learning over there in Minnesota, and hopefully he gets an opportunity to stick around another year. That'd be great for him, I think, and his development. And then another one I'm thinking is potentially, and I almost don't even want to say this because I don't believe it, but Kenny Pickett with the Eagles
Oh,
right now. Man, that's another name, right? For former first round pick. Steelers gave up on him. They said, "Yeah, we're done." They brought in Russ and Justin Fields. Maybe he's another guy.
that's a
Has
good
a little
point.
resurgence in his career too. So I don't know. I think it's a theme we're going to keep seeing. So
I think so too. I think that what teams will start to see, and especially this year with a quarterback class that is kind of top heavy, you might start to see some guys jump into free agency or ask for some trades who are just like, hey, like I could do that. Like if I know this one coach from this one team and I know he's going to be good. Because another thing people aren't talking about is that, and I saw this before the game started last night, Josh McCown is the quarterback's coach
yeah,
for the Vikings. And like I
uh-huh.
saw him training him before and I was like, I feel like people are not talking about that because he was having success before, and like now it's just like boom. Sam Darnold's like people are saying MVP and stuff, and I feel like he deserves a little bit of credit for that as well. And
I think that's a good point. Yeah,
yeah,
I I remember Josh McCown. We're both Bears fans. I'm sure you remember
yeah,
those days when Josh was back there slinging it. I remember he had a great game, like 5 touchdown game versus Dallas or something. Probably when we were kids, but
yeah.
man, I remember I didn't even want Jay Cutler back. I
No,
was like, Jay Cutler, get out of here. I love Josh McCown, man.
same here, man.
Love him as a kid.
When I saw the 6 year deal,
um,
I was like, oh, I'm done being a Bears fan for a few years.
right, right, right. That's how I felt most of this season until they beat the Packers
Tell me,
yesterday in that game. And
that
now
was
I'm excited to be a Bears fan again. I'm
yeah.
excited to go
There
into the
you go,
offseason. So
rejuvenated. You feel
that's
oh,
right.
it's bad. What did Ty say? He said if Thomas Brown won against the Packers, we'll build him a statue or a statue.
Yeah. Hey, he did it.
We'll build the statue. Um,
Yeah.
well, going back to Sam Darnold and this contract and everything, and you kind of mentioned it. I agree with you. I know I put down like the Vikings will probably fight for like 2 years because they'll
Mhm.
probably be thinking in the back of their head, I want my cake and I want to eat it too. Like they probably want to try to keep JJ. I do think that we're
Yeah.
talking about trading. I do think that they're still going to want to, just because at the end of the day, people might say, like, oh, this was a fluke season. We want to be cautious. We picked him. We gave up a lot for him. I do think they're going to try. And I do think so. And it's because you mentioned it. I think it's because of the fact they picked up Daniel Jones. I think they're thinking that already because
Okay.
I think they're thinking we need a legible, backup that was a starting guy. And like, he's a good bridge quarterback too. Whereas Sam has kind of gotten to that stardom where it's like he can legitimately demand money like Baker and Derek.
Yeah,
So they probably got Daniel because they're like, shoot, like, well, you're going to need someone that's like not going to be demanding that much money now. So I do think
right.
they're going to
That's
fight if they try to sign him for like 2 years, but probably
I
won't.
think that's a good point, and I think there might be a way to even do a 3-year deal if you're the Vikings, and then just structure it where there's no guaranteed money in year 3, and then make it's basically a 2-year deal, right? And
Yeah.
then you'd still have those couple years left, like you're saying, with JJ that you could still kind of play him. But the other thing I think of too is, is he really going to want to come back if he knows he's not guaranteed a starting spot?
True.
I don't think so. I think he's going to want to explore free agency. So, are there any teams to you that are kind of popping out that you think would be good fits for him?
See, I don't know because I see you put a few down, like the
Yeah,
Titans. I I don't think I would go there. And Raiders, I mean, you're not really having too much there. And then Giants, what are you just going to switch places with Daniel Jones? I
right.
feel like the places that are available right now are not the best teams. And if I'm Sam Darnold, I'm thinking like I got Justin Jefferson here, I got Jordan Addison, TJ
Right.
Hawkinson, and like the defense is playing well with Brian Flores sending the dogs out. Like it feels too right. And I feel like
Mhm.
maybe he takes a bit of a cut just to be like, this might
Just to
rejuvenate
say,
my career. I don't
yeah.
know. It's a tough because he's still older too. And like if he doesn't play well in those 2 years, it like let's say he took that, then he's kind of shit out of luck. Like he just kind
So
of
here,
goes out of
here's
nowhere.
another here's another scenario I'm going to throw out. This one's wild, but
Yeah.
let's say the Steelers have Russ and Justin Fields.
Oh God.
Let's say they don't resign either of them,
Yeah.
and they want to bring in Sam Darnold. Is that really out of the question? Is it really out of the question, though? You know what
Would
I mean? I
you?
don't think so.
I
Or
honestly,
would you rather have Russell Wilson, who's what, 34, 35?
yeah,
Would you rather have him or Justin Fields, or would you rather? And it's not going to be Justin Fields because they've been playing Russ, so they want Russ over Fields.
gonna
You would
get rid.
think. So I would rather have Sam Darnold
I mean, heck, if
at
this
this
is a
point,
scenario, I would do this. Yeah.
right? So I don't know if that's I haven't heard that, but that might be an interesting
That
scenario
is
too.
something to talk
I
about.
think that could work. You got George Pickens over there,
Yeah.
Fryermuth. I mean, they got a couple weapons.
Najee. Yeah.
Najee, yeah. I think he's a free agent, but bring him back, bring in Sam Darnold. I don't know. That
Yeah.
seems like that could be a little underrated option too. So
Yeah. Well, if so, we got the numbers, the years down. We think 3. We got the
yep.
range of APY total value, probably closer to 150 million or 37.5, which is similar to like Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr. We think that he'll probably get high market, given the cap too. They'll probably just be like, hey, I'm better than Derek Carr. Like, I've been playing my ass off. And Aaron Rodgers, even he could probably argue too. So even
Oh
then,
yeah, absolutely.
you both.
Absolutely.
So, as far as the structure of it, um, I think that the best thing for the Vikings, and I saw that you put it here, or I think I might have, I don't know. They're going to want to front load it, and Darnold's going to want to backload it. And that's going to be one of the biggest arguments for the whole thing because it's going to have to do with like if you just front load it, it's just going to be like a 2-year deal pretty much anyway. And you could just cut me, especially with the cap space you have. You could probably make it work in the next few years anyway. So
Yeah.
it's,
I don't know. I could see it going both ways though.
maybe.
Um, I could almost see because at the end of the day, I see what you're saying, but at the end of the day, I could also see where maybe Sam would be okay with a front loaded deal because even if he knows he's going to get cut after 2 years, at least he's going to get that money. You know what I
That's
mean?
true.
So
That's true.
I don't
If
think
as
it's
long as
I
he
don't
gets
think it'd be
ease, yeah.
right, right. So I think that could go either way. But yeah,
Yeah,
so
true. And I think I saw Baker's, and that seemed like I looked at it the other day, and that kind of seems how it is structured, very like front loaded and um very much like this could go anywhere.
yeah,
I don't blame him for that, and I think that's not a terrible idea. I mean, you never know what'll happen. Like these two guys a few years ago were just thinking like oh my gosh, am I getting, get another chance? And now here they are, like in the top 5 in some categories. And, I'm happy for
Mhm.
them. But as far as the Vikings specifically, from what you said, the exact cap space for 2025 is 76,467,385. And some notable
Mhm.
free agents, at least on defense, like I was saying, Harrison Smith, safety, Byron Murphy, cornerback, Cameron Bynum, safety, and Stephon. So pretty much their secondary. Stephon Gilmore, their cornerback. Those are
Mhm.
all the defensive free agents, and then offense is Cam Robinson, left tackle, and Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones was obviously just picked up. He's been playing great for them, and he's probably been a big help for Sam too because he's had a
I
good
think
run
so.
game, which has probably helped him, open up the pass game for sure.
And he's great out of the backfield too,
Yeah.
catching the ball. So he does it all. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so they have a first round draft pick, which will probably be high, and then they have 2 fifth rounds. So they don't have too big of a draft. So if I were them, I would, use a lot of that cap space, sign some of those defensive guys again, because I mean, maybe you let one go. Like I'm not sure how
I
some
mean,
playing, but
yeah, I
that's your
mean Byron. I'm
secondary.
really not sure how well. I'm really not sure how well all those guys have been playing either. I know Harrison Smith. I think still
Yeah,
playing at a high level. He's getting old. I think Gilmore's had a good season, but he's getting old too. You know what I mean? So I don't know how much money you want to commit to those older guys long
yeah,
term,
true.
but yeah, I mean maybe bringing them back on 1 or 2 year deals, and I don't know about Cam Robinson. I know they traded for him. I'm not sure how well he's done for them this season, but
Yeah,
that was really just because of the injury to Christian Darrisaw.
yeah,
So we'll see if they bring him back. But I think if there was one guy I could bring back out of those, it'd be Aaron Jones.
yeah.
I think
And
that's who I'd bring back.
I agree with you, and, it's kinda perfect that you're bringing him up again because, just to kinda transition into our next topic, Aaron Jones has been killing it as a running
Uh
back
huh.
this year, and so has Josh Jacobs with the Packers, and so has Najee Harris, and not even some of the notables I've mentioned, and so has Saquon frickin' Barkley, and so has
Hmm.
Derrick Henry. Now, let me paint another picture for you, Jonathan, because I always love painting pictures. I just feel like it's
Oh, I
fun.
know you. You're
I'm not a
Picasso
computer,
over here.
but I just Picasso, just absolute making some collages and everything. The running back position for the longest time in football and the NFL has been such a respected position, at least in the olden times. You got your Walter
Mhm.
Payton. They even made an award after him. You got your Barry Sanders. They were talking about him in the game last night. You got your Emmett Smith, with the Cowboys of the 90s. You got Larry Zonka from the Dolphins in the 70s. I could go even further back. You got the bus. I love the bus, Jerome Bettis. I mean,
Yep.
smash mouth offense was a thing. And then obviously, passing became the biggest thing of all. You got quarterbacks putting up 5,000-yard season. And so the running back position basically started to become obsolete. People were like, do we even need them? Let's just turn them into a wide receiver. Like, what do we need them for? Who needs a run game? I mean,
Hmm.
we literally, if you remember, some of the running backs literally had like a Zoom call like this, and they were like,
It
"Oh
did.
my god,
It
I
was a
don't
couple
know
of
what
off
to say.
seasons. Yeah.
Oh my god,"
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh boy, guys, like we better step it up." Like I don't know what
Uh-huh.
they were saying, but people were freaking out. I mean, the NFLPA got involved. They're like,
Hmm.
"You need to pay those guys more." And now here we are in 2024 season, and I don't think a team could really do well if they don't have a running back who's producing at some of the levels that some of these guys are producing at. And that's what
Hmm.
we want to talk about in our next topic. The NFL running back resurgence. This year has been all about the run game. I mean, you have gotten two guys specifically that should
Hmm.
be mentioned just at the top of, the absolute cream of the crop this year.
Hmm.
Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, and I know we've mentioned them before, have been playing like absolute juggernauts this year.
Yep.
And I mean, just before I get into some of the stats, Jonathan, what are you feeling about this running back resurgence this year?
Well, I think it's good. I think for so long you kind of touched on it, but For so long, man, it was the kind of the thought process of, hey, we'll just keep drafting running backs in
Yeah.
fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round. You got guys like Isaiah Pacheco, and there's the list goes on. Warren over there with the Steelers, he was a later round pick. Like, there's just all these guys that you draft them late and they're dogs. Like, you don't need to. There was just kind of this thought process of, we'll just draft one every couple of years and we don't need to pay one. And for a lot of teams, I think they just thought they could do a running back by committee and kind of get away with it. But then you see, what guys like Saquon and Derrick Henry, and we're going to talk about some other running backs this season too,
Yeah.
Or this episode too, like Josh Jacobs and some other guys. But like it's great to see what they've done, and it's great to see the free agent market last offseason too, and all these running backs all of a sudden, Tony Pollard included, and all these guys, man, they're starting to sign these big long-term contracts, and we're starting to see this resurgence, like you talked about. So I think it's really good for the game. I think our boy over there, Joe Shane with the Giants, I think he's shaking his boots. He's a little he's probably a little nervous right now, fighting for that job. He hasn't been fired yet, has he?
No, I'm pretty sure John
No?
Morris said he's keeping Joe Shane and what is it?
Okay.
Dable. He said it at the end of this.
Abel. So that's crazy because we watched Hard Knocks, man, and we were screaming at the TV watching that shit. Him talking about Saquon and letting them go, and they had no idea. But it was like they just were oblivious to the idea that the Eagles were just going to come in and sign him. And I'm not so sure that at one point they had an offer in for him that was probably very similar, if not even more than what the Eagles ended up paying him. But man, I'm just excited that running backs are killing it this year. Contracts are going up. Swift got a big contract too last offseason. Who isn't my favorite, but he's a Chicago Bear now, so hey, we'll embrace it. But it's been great, kind of seeing all that. So
yeah, I completely agree with you. And to hop on the thing you were talking about with our boy, our guy Joe Shane.
yep.
I think and I said it before this pod started. It almost is worse at if you don't know, Saquon Barkley was on track. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure I saw this. Only 28 yards. 28 yards. Literally, go run a 30-yard sprint on the field from breaking the record, the rushing season record. Who is it? Why am I blanking?
Was it Eric Dickerson?
Eric Dickerson, his record. And he only was 28 yards away. But since the Eagles, he was at 2,005 yards. But since the Eagles were already in the playoffs and they were playing the Giants, he sat the game. And at first I thought, why didn't he do it? It would have been the perfect revenge game, go against.
And it was against the Giants.
It was against the Giants. Just
that's the thing.
It would have been the perfect game. But then I thought, the fact that he sat down is an even bigger slap in the face to Joe Shane. Because not only did you lose a generational talent, and that's true, generational for sure. Because at the end of the day, we all know he would have broke it. And not only would he have broke it, he probably would have gone.
27-year-old running back. You can't put these numbers up. You
Yeah.
can't put up numbers like this.
Whatever.
All right.
Yeah, that's right. He's 27 years old. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they start to decline, man.
He's too old.
And to be honest, I don't think he's necessarily wrong on that point. I think once running backs get a little older, they do start to kind of decline.
There's exceptions, though, yeah.
But there's an exception to the rule, right? There always is, and Saquon is that exception. Derrick Henry is that exception too. But go ahead, sorry.
The slap in the face is just the fact that this guy was not only about to break the record, but the fact that he was so mature and such a leader to be like, I care more about our team doing well than some record. That should be even worse than if he came into MetLife and it's like, I'm just going to run 300 yards and show you guys the mistake you made. Because now you're showing John Mara is just sitting there with his mouth open like, oh my God, not only is he on our biggest rival, he's literally such a class act, and he's just an absolute god at playing running back.
Right. And the thing is, like,
I don't know why you didn't fire
everyone knew he was going to break that record.
Yeah, of course.
Right, but he's like, nah, I'm going to stay healthy.
Make sure
all of our starters are going to rest up. We're going to be good for the playoffs. We're going to go win a Super Bowl.
That's even worse than if man. Broke it.
Right, but man, I'm just very surprised if John Mara has come out and said they're going to retain both those guys. Man, that just
literally did.
blows my mind.
I can't believe it. But hey, like I
Yeah.
said, Hard Knocks off-season part 2.
So I wonder how Devin Singletary did this year. Motor Singletary. Remember that's the guy who they signed, right? That Joe Shane wanted really bad.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna pull up
Pull
and
that
we're gonna
up.
do
I'll
a
say some
little
stats.
comparison here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll say some Saquon then. Yeah. So
You
Saquon,
talk about Saquon.
let me talk about Saquon real quick. So Saquon Barkley, and I actually also have the betting odds for NFL MVP because that's how crazy it got. Fourth best odds right now. And that's, with guys like Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, 345 carries, which was first in the league, 2005 rushing yards, first in the league, career best, 13 rushing touchdowns, career best, which was tied sixth in the league, and 5.8 rushing yards per carry, which was his career best. I mean, these are
So
just astronomical numbers.
are you ready? Are
Look,
you ready to start laughing, Tony?
absolutely.
Look at this
We
shit.
made David Tepper cry. Now we're gonna make Joe Shane cry.
All right, here you go. This is the season. This is this year, 2024.
Oh my
Um,
god.
Saquon in Saquon 345 rushing attempts, motor 113, rushing yard 2005 to 437, yards per carry 3.9 to 5.8, rushing touchdowns 4 to 13. Not even gonna talk about receiving; it's absurd too. Yeah, and Saquon, I don't know, is he voted to a Pro Bowl this year? I'm sure he
Oh yeah, he
was,
was. He was
and I'm
voted.
sure he's going to be a first team All Pro. So yeah, I mean,
Well, Jonathan, there is a stat you are missing. I don't see his age on there, and Devin
oh
Singletary
yeah,
because he's younger. So
that's a great point. That's a great point.
we joke on this pod. Don't worry.
We have fun. It's funny to us. So
Oh,
so that's actually funny. Devin Singletary, his birthday is September 3rd, 1997. He's 27 years old.
oh,
Saquon.
that's funny. Oh my gosh,
Saquon is February 9th, 1997. He's 27. So
there's no excuse.
yeah, that's wild. If you guys haven't, if anyone's listening to this, you haven't watched HBO Hard Knocks, you got to go watch it
You
with
got
the
to watch
Giants.
it
If
now.
it's still
This
up,
is
if
the
it's
second
still
time.
up, you got to go watch it.
It's still live. You could see what he did.
You got to go watch it.
Oh
All
well,
right, all right.
not only
Anything
was
else we want
yeah,
to kind of get into some more running backs
I
here?
was gonna say, not only was Saquon fantastic, and we can razz on that. I mean, we could have a whole pod on that if we wanted again. But not only was Saquon amazing this year, but another guy, Derrick Henry with the Ravens, and everyone knew there was a chance with the Ravens and how Lamar Jackson was able to run with that offensive line, that there was a chance that he would kill it. I think he exceeded those expectations. And the crazy thing is playing in the same season as Saquon, people are not probably appreciating it as much as what he's done. But he was still in the top 15 for best betting odds to win the NFL MVP. I mean, running backs don't usually get there, but still, like, that's still great. 325 carries, which was second in the league behind Saquon, obviously. 1,921 rushing yards, second. 16 rushing touchdowns, which was tied first in the league. 5.9 rushing yards per carry, which is actually better than Saquon. And this guy, I mean, he was killing. Him and Lamar were just such a tag team, destructive duo. And I'm so excited to see them in the playoffs. They play Steelers on Saturday, and I'm just so excited to see again. And they've had a couple of games, obviously, divisional games. I would love to see just a TJ Watt, Derrick Henry crunch up type
Mm-hmm.
play. And like, I always
Hard
love
nosed game.
that rivalry is such like the newer Bears Packers rivalry to me. Like, I love
Right.
watching Steelers
Have
Ravens.
you been watching Hard Knocks this season
I haven't no
with the NFC North?
the NFC North one, no, or the AFC
Mm-hmm.
North, right? Yeah.
Or AFC? Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah, I'm
no, it's
thinking
okay.
Bears. AFC North. Yeah, it's
I gotta
it's been
watch
pretty
that.
good too. Mike Tomlin, man, he's electric.
Yeah, I love them.
But
But
yeah, man.
yeah, and then I wanted to bring up the fact because I said that these are two guys that have been playing out of their mind. But as
Mm-hmm.
far as just the landscape in the NFL right now, it's noticeable that the better teams are emphasizing on their run game. The top 5 teams in rushing attempts right now are the Eagles
Mm-hmm.
with Saquon, Ravens with Lamar and Henry, Lions with Gibbs and Montgomery, Sonic and Knuckles.
Yep.
Steelers with Najee Harris. And then you got the Packers with Josh Jacobs at number 5. Those were the top 5. And then so all these teams that I just mentioned, they're in the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. And then you got the bottom 5 teams. And you got number 28, the Browns with Chubb, which I'm actually surprised with, but I know he didn't play too much this
Yeah,
year.
he got hurt. Yeah, he got hurt this year. He's been out most of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got the Seahawks with Zach Charbonnet, who actually hasn't been playing too bad. You got the Raiders. Reminder, they got rid of Josh Jacobs to Green Bay. You got the
Mm-hmm.
Bengals, who got rid of Joe Mixon to Houston. And you got the Jets, which Brees Hall has just not been playing well. And Aaron Rodgers is just
The whole
basically
team, man.
the ball.
It's all dumpster fire. Yeah,
So,
it's all
you
dumpster
know,
fire over there.
some of the running backs that are on the free agent market, you got Aaron Jones, like we mentioned, in Minnesota, J.K.
Mhm.
Dobbins from the Chargers, who's been thriving with Harbaugh's offense in L.A., Najee Harris, which I doubt they'll let him go, Nick Chubb, who we just said is injured, but he's played out of his mind, Kareem Hunt, and then you got Javonte Williams with Denver. So,
Yeah,
there are some good options for teams. Like, we were talking about quarterbacks and everything, but maybe teams start to be like, hey, if we can establish a good run game, we can get a guy in there that just, cleans up the pieces and everything. And then we'll basically be back to old school football.
right, right. I think an interesting name that you mentioned, Nick Chubb, just talked a little bit about his injuries he's had this season, but I think that's an interesting one to kind of see what happens to him. He's a little older now, but I think he's still got some gas in the tank, depending on his injuries, and I think he's probably still, for most teams, they probably still consider him one of the top running backs in the league. So, um, really interesting to kind of see what his market's like, um, especially if he does hit free agency and doesn't resign. And then another name, and I didn't throw him up here on the screen. I wish I would have. I forgot to. Was Javonte Williams. I think that's another guy, a nice young player. I think he's only 25. I think he's had a pretty good season this year in Denver. I know they've had a little bit of a running back committee with McLaughlin and Audric Estime over there, but he'll be an interesting one too to kind of see, hey, do they re-sign him or is he maybe going to be a little too expensive? He might end up being one of the top free agent running backs for a team out there just because of his age. You know what I mean? He's so young. So
Yeah. I'm loving it. I've always loved these running backs, just like the rushing and just like the big guys going through the line. And, not that there's anything wrong with the big plays, like, passing game and everything, but I feel like, in a sense, the passing game is kind of like the three-pointer in the NBA, where it's like it's flashy, it's like, whoa. Whereas, like, the running back and like the big hits are kind of like the dunking in like basketball, where it's like, oh shit, like that's awesome. Like,
yeah.
I love that, where like you can see the old plays, and I still feel like, one of my favorite segments is Good Morning Football, like angry runs and everything.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah.
I've seen
With
those
Kyle
baseball.
Brandt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Kyle Grant.
yeah,
Shout
yeah.
out
Yeah.
Kyle
I know what
Grant.
you're talking about.
And I love
Come on the
seeing,
podcast, man.
yeah, come on the podcast. It'd be great. And so, because we love this, we decided, because we've been mentioning most of the bigger names. Like, I know some of them we didn't mention were like Josh Jacobs, Chuba Hubbard in Carolina, James Cook from Buffalo, who's been playing well, Bijan Robinson in Atlanta, Elvin Kamara in New Orleans. Me and Johnathan both picked out one guy that we both thought was kind of a little underrated, who in this year with all the rushing still deserves a little bit of praise. So I'll start with mine. I decided to pick out James Conner, who I don't know if you know this guy's story, but
Mhm.
like what he went through with, like, wasn't it cancer or something? Or was
I
it?
think so. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so.
I love this guy's story. And he was on Pittsburgh before when I heard it. But
Hmm.
this year, Arizona, they're 13th in rushing attempts, but 7th in rushing yards with 2,300. Like, this is Arizona overall. That's where he's at.
Right.
Second in yards per carry with 5.3. Second in rushing first down percentage with 29.4%, which is one of the better ones. I mean, second. And so, like,
Yeah.
he might not contribute to all that, but they're doing well. And as far as his stats, 236 carries this year, which is 12th in the league. 1,094 rushing yards, ninth in the league. 8 rushing touchdowns, 4.6 rushing yards per carry. I mean, that's pretty much 2 rushes and you get a first down. And as far as his contract, he just signed a 2-year extension on November 30th, actually, free agent in
Mm-hmm.
2026. 19 million for 2 years, 9.5 APY, which is 7th in APY actually. I looked it up, which is not bad. And it's in a good range, but if he keeps playing the way he has and they beat the 49ers bad yesterday.
Yeah.
And if maybe he keeps playing like the way he's been playing, letting Kyler like do well, I mean, he could get an extension in the future potentially.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great guy to highlight. Like you said, I love his story, and I feel like, everything he's done this season, you know, he's been top 15 in almost every category, seems like, for running backs. And 4.6 yards per carry, that's really good. So I'm with you on that one. I also picked a running back. I went with another guy on the West Coast, and I chose Kyron Williams to highlight this week. I felt like he's really been a workhorse for them the last 2 seasons. This past season, he had 87% of the total offensive snaps, and he was third in attempts on the season out of every running back in the NFL, and tied for seventh in rushing yards. But I do want to highlight just last week before this past game, I believe he was third in overall rushing yards. And right now, he was tied for third in rushing touchdowns. He had 14 on the season, 16 total with 2 receptions, averaging 4.1 yards per carry. So a little less than James Conner, but still really good, over 4 yards. And then he had over 27 explosive runs this season, which puts him top 10 out of all running backs. So, I think he's just been a stud for them. I think he's been a huge part of their offense. And last year he was a second team All Pro and a Pro Bowler, made the top 100 list last year as well, just his second year in the league, first year as a starter. I think he's had an already better season this year than last year. So I would expect him to be a second team, maybe a first team All Pro again this year, a Pro Bowler, and I would expect him to be on the top 100 list again. But he was a fifth round pick just a couple years ago. So I think it's really impressive, what he's been able to do. And his current contract, 4 years, 3.9 million. So that puts him as the 97th highest paid running back in the league. So just think about that, right? And with all the production he's had, but he will be eligible for an early extension after this offseason. So I'm thinking he'd be a good candidate for that. The
Absolutely.
biggest issue is, it kind of comes back to what we talked about earlier, right? Teams will start drafting running backs, late day 2, early day 3 of the draft, and kind of avoid paying their guy. And they'll just
Yeah.
keep rotating in a new back. And they drafted Blake Corum last year in the third round. He didn't really play this year.
Nope.
He wasn't, Kyron was the feature back, and I think Kyron will be the feature back next year. But wouldn't be surprised if Corum ends up kind of taking over. I think he'll have 2 years left on his contract when he's a rookie. And I think he'll end up kind of being that guy. I'd really be surprised if they re-sign him, despite how productive he's been, just because I would expect they'll probably just play Quorum and kind of see how he does.
Yeah.
But real quick, if he does do an extension, I think he's probably going to be in the top 10. I'm looking 4 years, 33.2 million. That's kind of where I have him pegged, just a little bit above Chuba Hubbard. I think he's kind of outperformed him so far on his rookie deal compared to Chuba's. But
Yeah. Yeah, the Rams have been a great story. I mean, they didn't start the season off too great, and all I've been seeing is Kyron just running in for the touchdown, doing this and everything. And like Matthew Stafford's been playing well too, but like some of these younger guys, like I'm loving it. Like good for the Rams, and they got a good guy. Like he's
yeah,
been well, and you're right. Like Blake Corum, you know, that's a guy that could be, nipping at his heels and everything because he won the championship in college, Michigan, and they were solely on a run game. So like he's
hmm
to having it on his shoulders, and with Kyron being a fifth round out of Notre Dame, like they might look at that and be like, why are we gonna give this guy an extension when we could just try out this new fancy toy? And that's what I
yeah,
did. I don't want that to be the
right,
case for running backs. Like I want them to be seen in this like they're a key piece to this offense because like I think that I one time heard it. It's like this theory of like as the more passing began to become a bigger thing and everything, you know, the linebackers became smaller and quicker, and the linemen became quicker so they can do a lot more, running around and everything. And now it seems as though the rough and tough game is starting to come back because you can kind of push guys around. And I hope
Mm-hmm.
that sticks around at least for a little while. Um, and that's kind of what I was gonna kind of transition to of um the next wave. You know,
Yeah.
we saw in some college football this year some awesome running backs. I mean, you had the first one that obviously comes to everyone's mind is Ashton
Ashton
Jenkins,
Genty.
from
Yeah.
Boise State.
Electric, man.
Oh my god. First of all,
He's
that man is just like a machine. I love the
something
meme
else, man.
showing like
I
Michael
look.
Myers where he just
I
stands.
know. I know. Hey, you know who else is doing that now? I just
Hey,
saw it last night.
I
Jameer
saw
Gibbs.
players doing it. I saw
Jameer Gibbs is
Jameer
doing it
Gibbs doing it. What'd
last
you
night.
say?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jameer
Yeah,
Gibbs
last
doing
night.
it
Yeah.
now.
Hmm.
It's so funny because I'm like, "Did you guys see that from Ashton?" I'm like, "There's no
Yes,
way
they
they
did.
did." And
Yeah.
it's funny because I think he even said, he's like, "Oh, I like to see everything over the line so I
Hmm.
can, get a good view." But he's been playing well, and obviously, I'm an Iowa alumni, so I gotta mention Caleb Johnson. He was
Hmm.
doing really well this season as well. Um, Quinshawn Judkins from Ohio State, he had a good season. Ollie Gordon, I think you mentioned him last week, but he's still going to be a good
Yeah.
player, even if he didn't play well. But one of the bigger ones that was good in the playoff, without
Scatterboo.
Scatterboo, Scatterboo, this
I
kid.
know, man.
I
I
mean,
know.
all I heard was that Texas's defensive front line was like insane. This man's like, I'm Cam Scatterboo. Hello, nice to meet you. Goodbye. Just ran right through him. And it was
Yep.
amazing. And that game was
Yep.
that was such a good game. But he went crazy, and I am excited to see these like tough guys just get into the NFL, and they're like third round. What are you talking about? Like I'm
Yeah.
killing some of these Texas defenders that you're going to be picking up first round. Like I slice through them. Like put me on a good offense and let's get this thing running. So
Hmm.
maybe because the quarterback class is a little, shaky this year, maybe some of the teams are like, let's just get a guy that we can hand it off to and be
Yeah.
we'll go Jim Harbaugh style and just get it to hand it off real well. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. I think out of these guys, how many do you think are going to be first round picks?
Honestly, I feel like only two, and that's being
Okay.
really generous
I agree.
because Ashton, I think genuinely will get first because I think a
Yes.
team the
He'll be a
Cowboys
first round pick.
the
I
Cowboys
think that's his floor. I think, yeah, they were, I think, between like 13 and 15. They're
yeah.
picking somewhere in between there. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
like the lowest he falls.
And
Yeah.
I think that there is a chance, maybe late round, because
Mhm.
remember, like years ago, and it's funny to see that I saw this guy on the Saints yesterday, but remember when the Chiefs picked up Clyde Edwards-Helaire,
Yeah. Oh,
that
yeah.
LSU team?
Mhm.
Maybe one of those like teams that are high in the playoffs are like, it wouldn't hurt to pick up such a good running back like Cam Scatterboo. Why not?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
screw it.
Maybe someone
Pick up this
kind
guy.
of sneaks in at the end there. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm
That's
thinking
true.
maybe they're
That's
like,
true.
we got everything we need. Let's just get a bowler.
I'll tell
And
you who might be a team if they let Aaron Jones hit free agency is the Vikings. That
that's
might be a team that
exactly what I was gonna
they,
say.
and maybe it's not Cam Scatterboo, maybe it's Caleb Johnson from Iowa,
Maybe.
right
Yes.
up the road there to Minnesota.
I was
Maybe
gonna
it's one of
say
those guys. But yeah,
that's
I think
exactly
that'd be a team at the end. Yeah.
with the way Aaron Jones has been playing, I could see them being like, yeah, we could pick up one of these really good running backs first round. We'll just let you go. And maybe they
Hmm.
don't. Maybe they go, second round or something. Because I could see Cam going very early first, or sorry,
Hmm.
very
Early second.
late first, early second. Or it's just Ashton and then there's just a big gap. But
Yeah.
I think that some of these guys will go like third round maybe. But Cam, I'm interested to see because after that game, I really do feel like his draft stock went up.
Absolutely, I do too. I think he was probably looking at a day three pick, and then those last few games of this season, in the playoffs, and then um, they had a game, one of their last games of the season. I don't remember what game it was. when he really went off. And I think that kind of put, the whole country on notice and fans just everywhere, like, oh my gosh, look at this guy. So maybe he'll end up being a third round pick. I kind of feel like that's kind of where he's going to go, third
That's
round.
fun.
But
And
someone could really fall in love with him and just be like,
yeah,
yeah, this is our guy, second round,
you gotta
whatever.
see
You know what I mean?
going
Never
through
know. So
pieces. Honestly,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, we'll have to see. But it's funny you said Vikings because it was the first team I thought. I thought that
yeah,
would be awesome. Like that would be
yeah.
a good team. Could you imagine? You got what is it? You got Cam Scatterboot running back. You got Jordan Addison. You got T.J. Hawkinson. You got Justin Jefferson. Like
Hmm.
that's an offense. And you sign some of
Yeah.
those defensive guys. I mean, we'll
Hmm.
see how it goes this year, but
I got one more team before we move on to our next topic. I got one more team.
sure.
Chargers. They're going to be picking late too, like mid-20s probably. So that's another team. Harbaugh bring another running back in. Maybe they do that. They got what, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards over there,
Yeah, I
old
mean,
Baltimore backfield. So maybe they move on, and I
maybe
think those guys are free agents. So maybe they move on and draft one too,
it's not a
late
bad
first
idea.
round.
Harbaugh loves a
Yeah,
good one. Yep.
yeah, good run game. So
Well, as far as our, you know, we're gonna jump into our usual weekly segment. Well, not weekly because, like I said, we've been on a little bit
yeah,
of a hiatus, but our usual segment just to end it all off. Um, we're going to talk about our overperformer, underperformers of the week. And since it's been a while, if you remember, we pick one NFL player or college football team, however we want to do it, that is overperforming or underperforming on their contracts this week and why. So I'll get started. I watched, and of course, I hate to bring up the Giants again, but it's just kind of funny that I'm going to make him the overperformer. Um, I'm going to give some kudos to Drew Lock for the New York Giants, not just because he ruined the franchise for another 4 years. So kudos to you for that. Good job, Joe. Uh, but no, seriously, um, I think it was because I have this past week, but it might be when they played the Colts. I think it was last week. Yeah, it was.
it was week 17,
16?
right?
You're
This was week
17. It was
18,
17. Yeah, yeah.
so it was
Week
a couple
17.
weeks ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
week 17, Drew Lock played against the Colts, and he had an astronomical night. 17 for 23 on passing attempts with 73.9% completion, 309 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 13.9 yards per pass, a QB rating of 155.3, and a QBR of 97.5. Now, if you don't know, Drew Locks, he's been bouncing around for a while. He was with the Broncos for a while. Like I said earlier, he was with the Seahawks behind Geno Smith, or I think they interchanged for a little while. This guy's had it, I think at one point he was in the XFL or UFL, one of them,
Maybe.
potentially,
Yeah,
or
maybe.
whatever those leagues were. But this man's had it rough, and I just want to give kudos to him. He was round two pick in the 2019 draft. And right now he's only on a 1-year deal worth $5 million currently with the Giants. And honestly, this guy would be a really good backup QB somewhere. I mean,
Mhm,
this is a guy that like he's a tough baller. I feel like every time he goes in, like he shows like he's trying his ass off. And
mhm.
I feel like, teams could benefit from that. So kudos to you, Drew Lock. Not just because, like I said, you made me laugh when I saw that game because you kind of screwed up the Giants draft pick. But it was awesome to see that you were putting up those numbers. So good job
Yeah.
overperforming.
No, I like that pick, Tony. Kind of makes me think of what we were just talking about a little bit ago with, who's going to be the next Geno Smith or the next Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold type player, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Drew Lock will get another opportunity like that in the future. You know what I mean? After this performance, this 4 touchdown, 74% completion percentage, 300-yard passing game versus the Colts. Maybe there's a team in free agency that'll bring him in. Maybe there'll be some injuries, and he'll get an opportunity to play a whole season or close to it in the
Yeah.
future and get himself a big deal too one day. But no, that's a good pick. There's a guy that I've really wanted to highlight all season, and I haven't done it yet. I was kind of waiting for the perfect time, but since this is the end of the season, this is the time to do it. So there's this guy, Jordan Meredith. He was undrafted out of Western Kentucky back in 2021. He's bounced around a little bit. Was with the Rams, the Raiders, a couple different times. But he's with the Raiders right now. And he was thrusted into the starting lineup week 6 against the Steelers. He's played left guard. He's played right guard this season. He's put up really good numbers. And right now, he's played – this is as of week – I think 17 or 16. My stats are a little old now.
Yeah. Oh, you're on mute.
Can you hear me? My headphones died.
You're good.
But he played 574 snaps and had 3 penalties and 0 sacks. That's pretty impressive, I think, for this guy. He's been he's graded out by PFF as a top 10 guard in the league, and he put up an 85.3 run blocking grade last week in week 17 against the Falcons. So he's really been balling. He's on a 1-year, $750,000 deal. And listen to this, Tony. He's an exclusive rights free agent at the end of the season. The Raiders can bring him back for about $1 million. And if they offer him, he has to do it.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking to see that.
It is. But, yeah, man, he's been balling and wanted to give him some credit this season because he's really been a dog. And that offensive line, I feel like, really has not been as bad as I think people think.
Oh, yeah, I don't think so.
And I think he's been a big part of that success this year. So, yeah.
You know what? Good for him. I'm happy. And honestly, just you mentioned like the offensive line hasn't been that bad. One of the organizations that I've always had like an extra bit of space for besides the Bears and everything was the Raiders. I love the old style silver and black and stuff. And I don't know, I'd love to see them good again. And, this is one piece, to the puzzle and everything. And maybe with Brady having some ownership now, like he's like, well, this is a good guy. Let's give him some more money in the future, obviously. And just start building because
we'll find that quarterback this year.
Yeah, exactly. Focus on that this year. But them winning though kind of screwed that up a little bit again because I don't know what they're doing either. I dogged the Giants, but they did the same thing.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, if you listen this long, thank you for listening to the Pigskin Payroll podcast. We don't know what we'll be talking about. I know that one topic I didn't get to today was talking about the house settlement. I've talked about it a lot. I'd like to explain it. The next team I think we would like to dive into that I mentioned to you, Johnathan, is the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
I want to talk about
we need to talk about them.
Kirk Cousins situation. I think it'll be a fun time. We'll try and get Ty on the podcast next time. And then another thing, in a few weeks, I'm at least going to be competing. I don't know if Johnathan will be there or not. We'll talk about that. I'll be going down to New Orleans to compete with Ty in a negotiation competition for NFL contracts. Our plan is to try and do an in-person or just on Zoom with Johnathan, everything. One of our episodes there, and we're going to talk about the 3 players that we're going to actually negotiate and kind of their contracts and where they line up in the free agent market. So if you are listening, for the few people that are so far, appreciate it. Where to follow, listen. Our Instagram is at Pigskin Payroll. Our X is at Pigskin Payroll as well. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can find us at the Pigskin Payroll Podcast. And our website is www.pigskinpayroll.com. Thanks, Johnathan. Good talking to you. Thanks, guys, for listening in.